Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, broadcasting live between the telepathic minds of me, Brandon, Paul, and Logan. We all come from the cosmic cabinets from the establishment. We're currently on break. This is the Breakdown Podcast. On this week's show, we're talking Fullmetal Alchemist, the show Love, Kirby Star Allies, Rocket League, and among that, a bunch of other stuff that we've been up to this week. Paul, Logan, how are you guys doing this week?
I'm doing pretty well.
What are you
I'm
eating?
eating salad right now.
Oh, okay.
Salad.
I've personally been doing better this week. Kind of got off to a rough start for me.
What happened?
So I was on my way home. I'm getting ready to merge onto the highway. I hit a patch of gravel, lost control of my vehicle, and slammed into the guardrail.
Jeez.
It's a great way to start off the week. All things considered, though, like everybody involved in the incident, from the officers to the insurance people, everyone involved has just been absolutely phenomenal, and it's actually made something that would have, at other points in my life, really terrified me, actually a very bearable incident. So, I'm happy that I walked away from it because it was actually at a reasonable speed and. Yeah.
So what's going through your mind as you started to lose control of your car?
It looked a lot like, oh crap, I'm losing control of my car. I mean, it was a very fast scenario. It's just, I realized, hey, I don't have control of this. I'm doing my best not to go into the 70-mile-an-hour traffic right over here, and I don't know, it was just kind of over as soon as it began.
Did anyone stop to help you?
No.
Wow.
Yeah, that was great.
So if say this had been not necessarily a fatal incident, but an incident where you've been injured pretty severely, had nobody stopped, they're just leaving you there to be hurt and bleeding yourself out.
Well, I mean, worse than that too. The airbag didn't go off. So I'm really glad I was able to get away from this. I mean, someone did actually call 911 before I got a chance to report the accident. So, I mean, someone was looking out for me. It's not like someone just left me totaled on the side of the road there. But,
okay, well, that's better.
I'm thinking that, rather than viewing this whole incident as, a tragedy, that it's just an opportunity.
Yeah.
Just kind of still working itself out. It gave me a chance to stay where I was at and visit some family that I hadn't seen in a long time. I'm able to actually kind of get a newer vehicle, which I kind of been wanting to do, but I haven't really been able to justify it. Now I have to, so.
John Davis in the chat is saying that he went through a similar wreck last year. So
it's really terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I have definitely been. I've never been in any really bad wrecks. Mm-hmm. There was one time I rear-ended somebody, and I was going less than 5 miles an hour, so that wasn't terribly scary. Yeah. And then one time I got rear-ended, but the roads were slippery, and there wasn't a whole lot of damage to either car, more to the guy who hit me. And so I just don't worry about it. He gave us this insurance information. But I have had not car troubles per se, but I guess car troubles is, I'm still learning to take care of my car, being a recent, mostly independent individual. And so there's a lot of things I forget, and it's really bitten me in the butt, but I guess it's a learning experience, right?
Yeah.
So I was feeling pretty baller about my how I was taking care of my car when I went and got my oil changed the other day.
Mm-hmm.
So, cool. But then I was going home a few days ago, and I was stopped on the interstate by a police officer, and I was not speeding. I wasn't even going 5 over, and he pulled me over, and I was like, oh great. And he asked, I guess you don't know why I pulled you over. I was like, no, sir. Thankfully, I was looking pretty fly. It was very neat. I was wearing a button-down shirt, so I'm like, I think I'm gonna make out of this. Probably not without a citation, but I think I'll be okay. I'll survive. And turns out my registration was expired. So yeah, that was a no-no. I gotta fix that in the coming weeks. And then I got a court date. And then on top of that, I did not have my current insurance in the car. So he gave me a citation for that. Thankfully, he said, if you can prove that you had insurance as of this date, you'll be fine. They'll just waive that. But obviously, registration's too far gone, so I'm going to have to just, you're going to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
How far past your date were you?
Well, that registration expired in September of 2017.
Ooh.
So, yeah, I've got good 5-6 months, and that's
so
not
it's
good.
reasonable to say that they let you slide for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that I hadn't gotten stopped prior to that is kind of, miraculous to me. But now at least I'm aware. It's like, well, I need to be aware, in the future of my registration, and this has certainly been the learning experience. And thankfully, it only cost me money.
Yeah. Shout out to Davis in the chat. There's always something with cars, and that is absolutely true. It's not one thing, it's always something else.
I guess I could throw in my own personal car story, because I also have had something happen recently. On several times on my way to work, the steering in my car is just gone. If I even go through a small puddle, the belt comes loose, and then I can't steer my car anymore. So on multiple occasions, I had to have my dad come out and help me rectify that so that I could either get to work or have a car that was running. At this point, my turn signals weren't working properly. I had an awful gas leak. I couldn't get through 3 or 4 days without running completely out of gas in my car. So I was filling up my gas tank, multiple times a week. It was awful.
That's costly and just dangerous.
Yeah, you're right. The sad part is that I'd gotten my car repaired for that gas leak, and when I got the car back, it still had a gas leak. So,
oh no!
I'm not going to fault the
person.
I'm not going to fault the person who worked on that for reasons I'll leave out. But it was time to get rid of the car. So, my dad and I made the decision that we're going to get the car junked. So, we took it to the junkyard and we had her smashed up. Goodbye, car. Luckily, a lifelong friend of mine sold me his old car. He recently got a 2018 model, which is really fly, by the way. But he sold me his old station wagon for a reasonable price, and now I have that. And I've been running that car for 2-3 weeks now.
It sounds like John has also said, I went through the same thing. What is going on?
I guess this is just a similar experience that
I feel like everybody has a car story.
Yeah. And I got we're all around the same age, so the gas leak. It's not surprising that we're having similar situations, especially because we're not buying brand new cars.
I feel like at our age too, we especially have those older cars. I've gone through the exact same thing you did, Brandon, with the power steering going out. Because my first car was actually my great grandmother's car. It was older than I was. And I've also gone through the exact same thing you did, Logan, with the registration. Though in that situation in particular, I can honestly say it wasn't my fault.
Right.
It was we had the communication saying that needed to be renewed. Me and my sister had exact same make and model cars, same year. The only difference was one number in the license plate. And so when my sister got the car put in her name, it was time to cancel her registration. Mine got canceled, and her sticker went on my car. So after 6 months of having my registration expired, I ended up getting pulled over because I had my sister's sticker on my plate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I had to bear that ticket. That was the 2 tickets that I've got in my life, was that incident and then running into the guardrail on Monday.
I've been blessed to this point in my life that I've never had a traffic citation or any kind of incident like that. I hope it stays that way. I probably just jinxed myself hardcore, but
I mean,
Yeah, at least this way, like, you're aware of, like, okay, well, I had these issues, and then so you can go out in your car, you could check, okay, when does my registration expire so I can get that renewed?
Right.
And, oh, I got a gas leak. Okay, I need to get that taken care of. Oh, every 3 months I need the oil changed. So
Be careful when you're merging onto the highway, especially at this time of year when they're throwing gravel and salt out. You know, because you can lose control of your car that way. So be careful when merging.
So was
Thing
like,
to be aware of.
was that gravel just like right in the middle of the ramp, or was it like along the edge, or?
Well, I was along the edge and I was getting ready to correct, but it was along the edge and in the middle, this one little patch of gravel that ruined my day.
On some level, I don't think that's entirely your fault, but
I think the ticket I got was I wouldn't have gotten the ticket if I was going a little slower. But I was
okay.
honest about the speed I was going, and it was a little bit higher than the safety speed. I've gotten a lot of people saying that just probably wasn't fair. You know, you're merging onto 70-mile-an-hour traffic. You have to get up to speed.
That's
but
true.
I feel personally like I should pay this ticket just because I completely messed up their guardrail, and someone has to pay to fix that. So it should hopefully come out of that ticket that I paid.
Well, that's our lifelong car trouble stories for you guys this week. Any other things that you were going to mention, Paul? I think you had a couple anecdotes.
Well, on top of the car, I come home 2 days ago. I go to turn on my computer, and it's not displaying at all. So it's also time to get a new computer.
You know, like, usually, assuming this is a graphics card problem, usually there's like a build-up to that happening, and you can start seeing the signs of the card going out. For it to just go out all at once, I can't imagine what actually happened inside that box.
I mean, this computer's had it's had its fair share of trouble. It had a lot of oddities to it. Like when I turned it on, I would always have to hit the restart button in order to get to start displaying, because it has had problems just displaying on startup.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, it's a quirky little machine, which is also kind of contributing to my desire to get a new computer anyway. I'm still gonna try and fix this guy before I just set it off to the side and buy a new. But
That's fair.
yeah,
Get as much life out of it as you can. Computers are expensive. And, you know, it's hard to build right now because of the heightened prices in graphics cards and just how hard it is to come by them in the first place. So if you're trying to build a computer right now, there's a lot of instances where you'll find that pre-built machines are going to be less expensive than buying the parts separately, which is mind-boggling, but that's just the way the world is right now.
yeah. I think that's probably the way I'm gonna end up going, just so I can save a couple of bucks, save a little bit of time, because as much as I want to build another rig, I don't have the time.
That's fair.
Got to get something back in here and gotta get set back up so I can continue the show in the highest quality for you guys, because you're the real MVPs.
Oh, you're making us feel all special.
I was talking to our audience.
Oh, you made them feel special. Them.
I mean, you guys are also. It's really great to have you guys here too.
Oh, thank you.
Love you guys.
Well, I know a couple of us watched some movies this week, and Paul and I, we ended up going to the movie Annihilation over the weekend last week.
Oh boy.
For those of you who don't know, this is from the same director as Ex Machina, which is a movie I very much enjoy. That was one of my favorite movies the year that came out, so I was...
It's one of the reasons I've been paying attention to Annihilation.
Yeah.
Because of that film.
I wouldn't, honestly, looking from the trailers at Annihilation, if I didn't know that about the movie from the get-go, I probably would not have taken my time out to go see it in the first place. I don't... The thing about Annihilation is I don't think I enjoyed it nearly as much as Ex Machina, but I did enjoy it a whole lot. Paul, I think you had some different opinions than I did, just outright, so I'll let you take the lead here.
Well, I think for the most part, my opinion is pretty similar to what you said. I think I liked Ex Machina a little bit better, just because I walked away from that movie having a very solid grip on what did I just experience. There was no question I had no questions at the end. I knew what had happened, and so I do to some degree enjoy walking away from a movie like knowing, having a complete picture, versus like this, I walked away and I still had a lot of questions about what did I just experience? What the heck did I just experience? What is going on?
Yeah, like I typically, personally myself, I enjoy experiences like that where, you know, a couple hours after I've seen the movie, I'm still thinking about it, still trying to piece things together and understand kind of what I went through. Annihilation, I have a little bit of that, and I feel like to some degree the movie has that. On the other hand, I do feel like a lot of the film is just kind of red herring, and, you know, I feel like certain aspects of that movie don't have a reason, and they're just there because they're there, and that's okay.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like it's a little devalued in that sense, because they're not necessarily trying to achieve something specific, but it's so ambiguous that I don't think that there's a end goal in mind, even in the minds of the director. But that's just me.
I think that's kind of I like being able to walk away and still like think about it, still have some questions to answer, but I feel like this movie had too many questions. You get to the you end up, it's like a cliffhanger. It's, well, what happened next? So you're still thinking about that, but you still have that very definitive where it leaves off. It was either going this way or this way, and it's kind of left for you to decide or interpret or kind of fill in that gap, where this was just kind of, it left in a very ambiguous place that I'm not sure what's happening next. I'm not sure what happened. I'm just not sure.
You'll find that for like the entire last act of the movie just, it doesn't explain itself. You can infer to a certain degree what's taking place, and that's fine. Like I had a decent grasp on what was happening in that last act of the movie, but they don't back anything like with any backstory. They don't tell you a ton. Like they give you a little bit of exposition after those events transpire, but just enough just to give you like a loose understanding. And I'm just talking about straight exposition. I'm not even talking about like backing. They give you a little bit of explanation for that exposition, which personally from my standpoint, you shouldn't have to do that in a movie. If you have to do that in a movie, you might be failing as a filmmaker. But that could have been a creative decision, and if that's what it was, that's fine. But I just wish like it would have been clearer for me when the events transpired in the first place. I kind of appreciated a little less for that. And I don't want to make it sound like I didn't like this movie. Like I prefaced it, I really did enjoy this movie. I had a great time with it. Definitely would like to see it again to see if maybe some of my misgivings are just from things that I missed during the movie the first time around. And that's always possible.
Yeah.
And
I was still able to enjoy that film too.
Yeah.
It was just the ending wasn't as satisfying as it could have been for me.
What I like though is, you know, we watched the movie with our friends Devin and Alvin, and they don't go to the movies I don't think as much as we do typically. Mm-hmm. But you know, the movie even like inspired discussion from them like afterwards, and we were like trying to piece together what had happened. So they definitely enjoyed it. So for me, that was kind of cool to see that we could all kind of come together afterwards and try and talk it out and figure out what happened. Yeah. And there's a couple scenes in the movie that are pretty gruesome. There's not a lot of it, but there is one scene in particular that is pretty nasty. And if you maybe just don't bring your kids to this movie, I'll just say that.
What's the rating on this film?
Was it rated
M for mature?
I don't think it's rated. Is it rated R? I can't remember.
I could easily see it being rated R.
I would imagine.
Like it's a bit much. Like even for me,
it's rated R.
I think it was because the gore kind of went into an area that like makes me squeamish.
Yeah.
So that didn't help, but I did have to look away a couple different times just because like it was a bit much.
Yeah. A couple things I want to praise specifically about this movie, and then a couple more critiques I have. But from a visual standpoint, I very much enjoyed what I was seeing on screen. The color choices for the shimmer and a lot of those decisions, I think, really played well to the strengths of the movie. The designs for some of those creatures and some of the things that you see in the Shimmer is really cool. They really kind of engrossed me in that world, leading me to ask questions, and I like it when a movie leads me to ask questions just from things I see, which, like we talked about, happens a lot in this film. I'm gonna have to take a slight knock at some of the acting in this movie, because some of those actresses, and it could have just been this movie in general, but a lot of it wasn't like super, I don't know, like they didn't sell it to me all the time.
Yeah.
The lead was great. I forget her name, but she's like the commander person in charge. I liked her a lot. Some of the tertiary characters or the secondary characters, I honestly didn't care about that much, because you don't learn a ton about them. You get little hints into their lives, but not enough to really be anything super meaningful. But that's just me.
You get hints of their tragic backstories, and that's about it.
They're tragic backstories that you could have assumed from the beginning that they already had. Yeah, it wasn't unique enough in that sense for me.
Yeah. One thing that was interesting about this movie, and I think this is where this film kind of films like this shine. When it's too confusing, you're walking away with too many questions. You gotta find the smartest person in the room and have them explain it to you. You know, Jake Cannon managed to post something about this movie that just it really got me thinking in I think the right area. And so it was enough to make me want to go back and actually see this movie again, so I can kind of see what he was saying and how it aligns with this film, and kind of use that as like my lens for watching this.
Do you have that pulled up right now?
I do. Do you want me to read that off?
Please do.
Logan, are you okay if I read this off? I'm not sure how if it's necessarily spoilerish, but
I'm not really concerned too much about spoilers for this film, so go for it.
So Jake says, "Beneath the gore is a descent into what we truly desire, to feel alive again, to taste transcendence. There's a quote in the movie that says, almost none of us commit suicide, whereas all of us self-destruct. Annihilation hits on this theme over and over again. Our desires are self-destruction, masquerading as salvation. In the echoes of a perverted Eden, strained and marred by the effects of unnatural mutations and violence, this film is about where our ultimate desires lead us, annihilation."
That really hit home for me when I first read that. I think he pretty much nailed it.
Oh, definitely.
And they kind of explored those themes, actually in a few different ways. The most like surface level is when the characters that end up going into the Shimmer for the majority of the movie first kind of meet. They have that kind of surface level discussion, which I think it inspires the theme and discussion for the rest of the movie. But there's a couple things like with the main character's own like regrets that play into that a little bit. I kind of wish they'd explored that aspect a little bit more. I don't want to say too much, but that plays into the theme too. Just I feel like they kind of cut that short. Yeah, I need to know a little bit more about that. Sorry, this is ambiguous, the discussion, but it's also ambiguous, the movie, so.
I think that Jake actually just gave me the perfect lens when viewing this movie again.
The second time?
Around to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it'll really kind of change it for me.
Yeah, so definitely look forward to this movie coming out on home media to give it a second shake. I believe it's still in theaters, so if you haven't seen it yet, definitely go check it out. Especially if you liked Ex Machina. So, just follow up on the director, figure out what he's up to right now. I want to mention the comments real quick. Granny A is having trouble with her Chromebook. I probably wouldn't have recommended a Chromebook from the get-go. And the other thing is, like laptops, you can only really expect about 3 years of life out of. So there's that as well. Any other movies we've watched this week?
Yes.
Take us home, Paul.
I sat down and I was kind of looking for a movie, something a little bit shorter that I can digest, and I don't have as much commitment as like a TV show or anything. And I landed on When We First Met on, I think it's a Netflix original.
Yeah.
And this movie, I didn't go in with the highest expectations. It was truly fantastic. Within the first 5 minutes, I thought, I know where they're going to go with this, and I'd rather them do this instead. And it didn't go where I thought it was going to go. It went exactly where I wanted it to go. Without kind of digging too deep into it. The basic premise for this movie is the main character fell in love with this girl who is now engaged to someone else. They met at this party on Halloween 3 years ago, and every time he jumps in this photo booth, it takes him back to that day, and he's trying to win her heart. Just change it. And then after the day plays out, he goes back to present day, and he has to figure out how the changes have affected their relationship and kind of navigate from there and go back, try it again if you mess something up too bad. And so it's basically Groundhog's Day as a rom-com.
So if you like time travel, there you go.
Even if you don't. It's a very charming movie. I highly recommend it.
Okay. The wife wanted to actually watch this one, so probably do that sometime into the next week. Let you know what I think. No, I know critical reception wasn't very kind to this movie, but they usually aren't to rom-coms to begin with, so keep that in mind before you watch it.
I think you can easily sit down, and we've talked about this several times, where enjoyment's a state of mind, and if you go into it trying to enjoy it, you can. Yeah.
That's important in this day and age, especially with some of the conversations we've been having about movies that have come out recently, like the Last Jedi. Not even really going to touch that anymore than just that as it is. And then there are other movies, like one that took me by surprise was Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. Went into that movie expecting it to be top tier, trash tier, and ended up having a really, really good time. And so did a lot of other people, as it turns out. So
I need to really watch that movie because I had a coworker dare tell me the other day that he liked it more than the original Jumanji.
Oh, well, make that two. I'm sorry, I don't really like Jumanji.
That, I guess it's fine.
Oh, wait, what was that? You hate Robin Williams?
Yeah, that's how the internet would have accepted that, right? That's how they would have taken that. No, Jumanji, I've never really latched onto it. Then again, it's been a long time since I've seen it, so if I watch it now, maybe I have a better appreciation for it. But as of right now, I definitely like the sequel more than the original. Fun movie.
I'll have to watch it.
To each their own.
Any other movies this week?
TV show? That still counts, right?
I have watched some TV this week.
Go for it. Shoot.
Logan, you want to go first?
Yeah, actually, so this is a show that I've been watching for a while, that being The Last Man on Earth. It airs on Fox, and then they also upload all of the most recent episodes to Hulu, like a day or two afterwards. So currently the 4th season is ongoing, and we're in a little bit of a break. But I bring this up most importantly because obviously one of the best ways to watch a TV show is when you have one or two other people who you can watch it with and you can discuss it with. So my little brother is the one who turned me on to the show, and I binged it, and I'm all caught up, and I'm just waiting for the next episode, which airs tomorrow. It's been a few weeks since the last episode, so I'm very excited for that. But then more recently, Johnny, which if anybody watching doesn't know, Johnny is my roommate, and he has been catching up. He is now on the 4th season, and I'm pretty sure he's actually in the other room watching it right now. But thankfully, I have somebody around who can watch it with me. And if you're not familiar with the show, it stars Will Forte and there is this virus that essentially wipes out the world's population. And there are very, very few people who survive. And in the very few episodes, it looks like Will Forte's character, Phil Tandy, is the last person on Earth, the last man on Earth, which turns out not to be true, not exactly true. And it's a comedic show. It's super funny. It starts off, he's just, I can do whatever I want. Like, I'm just going to go to the grocery store and just grab all this crap, and then I'm going to grab a bunch of expensive equipment and just treat myself while he tries to find other people. And it eventually becomes like, you have to ask the question, ultimately, why is this show called The Last Man on Earth when he's, in a literal sense, not the last man on Earth? And I think I finally came to the realization it's probably because the character of Phil Miller is an extremely self-centered and selfish individual. And so while he may not be the literal last man on Earth, he treats it like he is, like he deserves the world at this point. And that plays a lot into the comedy of the show, where he is just constantly grinding against these other characters and trying to get his way or get them to believe that he is some sort of saint and beautiful person. And it's a riot. I could go on for a while. I'm not going to. I would just suggest that if anybody loves a good, relaxed comedy, or maybe is just a fan of Will Forte because he's wonderful, go ahead and watch The Last Man on Earth. It's quite the treat.
Where's that available?
You can watch it either on the Fox network, if you still have any sort of cable, or if you have a subscription to Hulu, you can also watch it on Hulu. All of it is on Hulu.
Sweet.
All right.
I have Hulu.
I need to get Hulu, apparently.
I've been watching a lot more Hulu than Netflix recently, I've noticed.
I think it's because Hulu has a better selection in terms of just like pre-existing content.
Yeah.
Netflix has a lot more original content, which definitely lends itself. But then, one of my favorite shows, Futurama, which I'll mention again and again and again, is all on Hulu and is no longer on Netflix. So I end up rewatching a lot of Futurama again and again.
Real quick, John in the comments, Robin Williams will haunt Brandon forever now.
But I love Robin Williams. It's
a treat then.
But everybody else knows the truth.
Who doesn't want to get haunted by Robin Williams if they love him?
Oh, okay, yeah. You know what? I welcome that then. I want him to appear to me as Genie.
Oh,
I've never had
fantastic.
a friend like him. Any other shows this week?
I started the third season of Love on Netflix. This is something I've been watching since the first season first aired. It's a very, very enjoyable comedy.
I have to admit, I've never heard of this show.
Really? I would have thought I would have told you about
Today
it.
was the first day I've heard of it.
It's funny because it's actually Judd Apatow, who has directed a bunch of films. Some very, very, I can't remember any off the top of my head, but he associates himself a lot with Seth Rogen.
Okay.
It has that kind of feel. But I do know that this show initially started out as another one of his films.
Okay.
And then eventually just kind of became a show, and obviously it works pretty well with the way that Netflix goes about releasing their content.
I'm going to assume that my brain filtered out this show because its title is just the word love. That might have something to do with that. Anyway, Paul, what do you got?
Well, I'm trying to think the best way to describe this. To a degree, it's sometimes a very dry show, but it's also the thing I like about it is it's a very honest show. It has its very ridiculous, over the top humor moments. When you get down to like the character dynamics, it's a very like real show. These are characters that are very, very flawed and trying to overcome their flaws to find love. And I think that's something like deep down we can all really relate to. Love isn't perfect like it is in rom-coms. People are flawed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my wife and I's relationship is just us bickering all the time. And it's usually about the not important things, and then we never bicker about the important things for the most part. Aspire to our level of of relationship. Yeah, no, I think that's perfectly relatable.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it, like, there's a lot of, like, back and forth and a lot of hate. They're always flinging flinch at each other. And then it's kind of wrapped around these very, very nice, kind, tender, loving moments that they're sharing. And then it just kind of goes back into their relationship problems. And it's just kind of like that cycle over and over again. But it's still it's like, a very gripping show.
My wife in the comments, it's like Roseanne. That's how I remember Roseanne. It's just Roseanne and Dan yelling at each other all the time, but the episode always ends with them showing that they still love each other very much. It's a timeless tale. It really is.
Yeah.
And you guys were talking before we started the show that this is the last season? Or was that a different show?
Right. I didn't know that this was, but according to Logan, yeah.
Yeah, what I've seen online, it has been canceled. So I'm not sure if they wanted to go like another season to finish it up or where that came about, but it seems like Netflix has canceled the show. Maybe it hasn't been.
Is this a Netflix original?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So it seems maybe it wasn't doing as well as they had hoped.
Maybe that's why I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
That could also contribute to it. I mean, they do a decent job advertising it when the season first drops, but after that, they got a bunch of other content to push forward.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I want to say it's usually about 10, 12 episodes a season. They're half-hour episodes, so they're a little bit easier to digest. And so if you're looking for something fun, maybe not something family-friendly, because it does have some very adult situations to it. So don't watch it with your kids, or do. Up to you.
Yeah,
if you're looking for something, those short episodes, I recommend this series to you.
Okay. How many episodes a season?
So first season's 10 episodes, and then the next 2 seasons are 12 episodes each.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I just want to give my 2 cents about the show and maybe one of its problems. Because while I do enjoy it, I think part of my enjoyment is just the kind of situational. It almost feels like a sitcom in a lot of ways. But the way that it's presented, you think that there might be like this larger arc or something a little bit deeper, and it never really dives into that. So kind of, I feel like it masquerades as something that everybody expects it to be, but it's not going to live up to those expectations. And then also, I mean, I think the whole thing about the show is it's supposed to be about dating, essentially, and there's only so much you can do with that. There's only so many like situations that you can put these people in to really make a compelling narrative to keep people coming back. I watched the show again because I kind of like that kind of thing, but it really limits the scope. Also, it stars half of the 2 main characters is stars Jillian Jacobs. I just think she's like the prettiest thing ever. So it's really easy for me to watch this because it's just like eye candy the whole time.
So one other important thing happened this week in the movie world, it actually happened yesterday, was the release of the new Avengers Infinity War trailer. I really wasn't expecting a new trailer before the movie came out, so this kind of came as a surprise to me. And this trailer is mostly just full of stuff that we haven't seen yet. So that was kind of cool. I'm really excited for this movie, guys.
Yeah, I was excited given the first one. I haven't decided if I even want to watch this new trailer yet. I haven't gotten around to watching it. And I've already decided I'm going to see it. So, like, why spoil more information?
Well, that's why I said I really wasn't even expecting another trailer, because it didn't really seem necessary at this point.
Yeah.
They already sold everybody. Everybody can go see this movie.
Yeah, no, I saw some...
That's why every single IMAX 3D showing from the day it comes out until May 20th in Rockford is sold out.
Yeah. I read online, like, that the advanced, like, ticket sales have just, like, rocketed past, like, everything else in history.
Yeah,
so...
me and Dylan, our friend Dylan, were talking at work yesterday, and we fully expect this to surpass Avengers for highest grossing, or the original Avengers for highest grossing.
Yeah, I think it helps that like a lot of the movies leading up to this film have really stepped up their game within the MCU. Like a lot of them, you're like, well, this is a really mediocre film, and then I think at one point Disney was like, we need to try harder with these films. We really need to take some better steps to make up the quality and up the enjoyment and all this other stuff. And so doing things like Thor Ragnarok, the latest Spider-Man film was really well received. Black Panther was really, really hype. So I think that's all feeding into the hype, the marketing behind, Infinity War. And so I'm very much excited.
They're using like new IMAX and ARRI equipment to film this movie, and I think that definitely shows from a visual standpoint just from the few trailers we've seen. And I think that'll also help to kind of separate it from the other movies in the MCU, because they all kind of have this samey look to them, and this one looks just different enough. It looks more cinematic, don't you know? Have they released the budget for this movie yet? I'm very interested to see how much they spent.
I'd be really afraid to see how much they spent.
I'm glad that they're going all out.
It's funny because you see the large budgets for some of these films, and it doesn't even faze me because it's a good investment. Because that they could spend $400 million on this movie, which is absurd. They probably wouldn't need to, but they could spend $400 million, which would be the most bloated budget in history, and they would make their money back.
I look at the trailer for Avengers: Infinity War, and like every time I see a trailer for that movie, I look over at Justice League and I think to myself, what happened? I love the DC universe, but man, my I don't know, my feelings towards that movie have degraded quite a bit since I've seen it in theaters.
Yeah, so I just came across an article. Of course, this article is over a year old at this point.
Yay.
Oh yeah.
But the title is just Avengers: Infinity War could be the most expensive film ever made.
I mean, look at the number of stars in that. You're going to spend so much money getting all of those people to appear on screen together.
Where is Jeremy Renner? Says the internet. He's not on the poster. Wasn't in any of the trailers. Is Hawkeye just gone?
He'll be there. Don't worry about it. He'll be there.
They just don't want to talk about Jeremy Renner. Well, he wants to quit, doesn't he? Or did I make that up? I think
I can see it.
I think he's been trying to leave for a while.
I could imagine that they, if he wants to leave, they could probably find a way to write him
Age of Ultron
out.
would have been his best out.
Yeah. Well, it almost seems, like they've kind of been setting up his departure.
I feel like this would be the best place for him to depart, though.
I have a feeling
in all the great Hawkeye glory that deserves. I
personally anticipate we'll see a majority of the cast depart. Maybe not after this movie, but the next Avengers movie. I'm even slightly anticipating a clean slate. I'm not sure.
We'll find out.
We'll find out. I really hope that this movie shatters expectations. The movies have been doing a great job of referencing things from the comics without just like directly translating that to the screen. Like there's a great shot in Captain America: Civil War with Captain America and Iron Man, with their arms up towards each other. Got Iron Man shooting a beam and Cap's defending it with a shield, and that was a direct reference to a comic book cover. So I think referencing the official comic universe in small, subtle ways like that serves these movies better than just adapting them, and it keeps the fans guessing too. So keep doing that. That's cool. Any other thoughts about Avengers before we move on?
No, I'm excited. I can't wait till it actually is released.
You can expect a Avenger-centric episode probably at the beginning of May. Just letting you know. Moving on. We got to talk anime. There's one anime in particular that we'll be saving for the end of the episode. You might be able to tell what that is by the name of the episode, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. So we're going to jump over that real quick. Any other anime we've watched this week?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I've put in about 7 or 8 episodes into Naruto.
Ooh,
look at you go!
All right.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I'm pretty much all caught up with Dragon Ball, so that's not really waiting on me. And Naruto was one of those other large shonen animes that I was like, I would like to jump into this at some point, but I don't know when I'll get around to it. I don't have a ton to say about it, but I did want to mention that I was watching it. So anybody who isn't watching Naruto or is already a fan and seen every episode of the original series and Shippuden or whatever, I'm enjoying myself. Yeah,
I'm glad you're enjoying yourself.
I am. Yeah, I like the character of Naruto. I love the voice actor for Naruto. And I can't wait till I watch more, and I have more to say in coming weeks. In terms of anime, that's about all I've done this past week.
As a quick point of reference, episode 8, I believe you're in the first arc now.
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so, yeah.
So I definitely look forward to hearing what you have to say. Once you've done with the first arc, we'll probably dive into it a little deeper once we get to that point.
That sounds like a good place to talk about it once I finish that. And
Paul, you watched Trigun, is that right?
Yep, I finally finished Trigun this week.
What did you think?
It's funny because memory changes things, and so in my mind, this show was towards the ending, it played out a little differently and a little bit better in my memory than it actually does. It's still a good show. It's still something I'd recommend people go and watch. I do think that they should definitely go back through and reanimate it, just re-series it.
Is this a Fullmetal Alchemist situation? Does it follow the manga or no?
I think it does. I don't know the manga, so I can't say for sure.
Okay.
I watched the movie. I started it. I never actually finished it, so I'm gonna finish that for next week. But I will say that I think that happened way after the original anime premiered. They went back and they made this movie, and it makes me really, really want them to go back and give that same treatment to the original series.
Okay.
I think if they updated it, it'd be way more accessible to people.
They need to do that with a lot of anime come from that kind of late 80s, early 90s era.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't, even to this day, a lot of them don't finish, and a lot of them kind of veer off in their own direction, separate from the manga. And it's kind of a shame that we don't get to see them animated the way that the original mangaka was, intended.
Yeah.
I think a practice that the anime industry should start looking to is doing something similar to Shokugeki no Soma, where we do 26 episodes a year. That's it. Or, even recently it's been 13. Just,
I'm okay with that.
Do like a little half season or a full season, take a year-long break, come back when there's more material to reference. That's we don't need to kind of ruin the reputation of these shows, because not all of them get a second chance the way that Dragon Ball Z did, and Fullmetal Alchemist, and all the other shows that have come back in a true form. So get it right the first time. I'll never know what happens at the end of Kenichi the Mightiest Disciple unless I read it.
Too soon to bring that up again, man.
Still hurts all these years later. We watched that in high school, didn't we?
Yeah. And we held out hope, like all of college, that they would come back and just finish it.
There is an OVA series of episodes. I think there's 13 in OVAs, actually, that just are episodes that take place periodically throughout the rest of the series up until the end.
That's not okay.
The last episode of the OVA is literally right before the final battle. Don't do that. Stop. Just get some help.
Yeah, it seems like, and I mean, I would probably say this about, like, you know, the Japanese animation industry and kind of the way they treat, like, manga artists. Like, it seems like there needs to be some reform there, or at least a different attitude about how they go about producing and what kind of expectations they put on. While it's good to be a productive society when you're anticipating that your creators are going to be overly productive, and it's not good for people's health. You know, I've heard so many stories about manga artists who kind of just don't get paid a lot. They don't get paid for their work, and that's something that, like, needs to change. We need to not stress out our creators so much and allow them to just do whatever.
And
actually that's go ahead.
You hear about the illustrator and writer of One Piece, Oda, and you know he spends like all of his time in his apartment, basically drawing, and he just gets a couple hours a week to himself. And you know he's already been at this for over 10 years. I can't imagine that he's in the best of shape, you know, from a mental and physical standpoint.
I would just end it.
Look at Akira Toriyama. Toriyama, I mean, on top of the issues he's had with his editors as a manga artist in the past, you know, where they would comment on the things he'd draw and then he'd get forced to change them. And we know a couple instances firsthand where, you know, that definitely changed things. You know, Gohan, I think at one point was going to be the hero of the series, and then that ended up not happening because of commentary, either from the editor or from the community. You know, the Frieza, you know how Frieza has multiple forms? I'm pretty sure that was a result of that as well. Another one, actually, the androids were originally just going to be androids 19 and 20, and his editor was like, nah, they don't look cool enough. That's why we have androids 17 and 18. That's literally why.
Well, I will thank their editors for that.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah, and it's like some of those things aren't always bad. Like, you need to have some producers or editors who are like, hey, we should, like, maybe think about doing this or something like that. But I mean,
it can be much in some cases.
Yes, yeah. I mean, obviously there is a line. They're not always right. But I will say that at least it feels like in the U.S. And other, you know, really Western countries that I feel like our timetables are getting a lot more relaxed. And I think that's because the creators have a little bit more control. More people are independent and doing things independently, so they can kind of go at their own pace. And again, some people are still very productive, but at least you have the chance to say that, hey, I'm gonna take a break for a bit, and I'll be fine. I'll still make enough money, but I don't have to stress myself out. A good example of this is Smooth McGroove. If nobody's familiar with him, I know Brandon might.
I am.
You guys might be familiar with Smooth. For those who aren't, he creates and mostly created YouTube videos of him doing a cappella arrangements of songs from video games. And recently, he took like an 8-month break from YouTube. He didn't post anything. And recently, he came back with a few extra videos and then some videos of him talking about why he took that break. And you know, for his own mental health and all this other stuff, because those kind of videos take a long time to make. You have to sit down, you have to arrange it, then you have to perform all the parts, then you have to mix it, and then you have to edit the video, and it's pretty time consuming. And to do that at least once a week, that's a lot of time. And especially as a creator, you can sometimes kind of judge yourself for those kind of things, and that's just added stress, and you have to learn how to fight that. And so the ability for creators to take time for themselves and still sustain themselves, that's huge. And that's fantastic. And that's something that I hope that happens across the board as time goes on, as people kind of gain more control over what they're doing. I mean, obviously we're creating right here. We don't have a boss telling us to do. We are our own bosses. And so we don't want to fall into the trap of not creating at all and not being productive. We want to find out ways to do those things faster and make some of those processes more streamlined. But we also don't want to fall into the trap of not doing anything else with our lives. Because it's important to have those times where you're having discussion with friends. It helps that that's built into what we want to do.
Yeah.
Or, taking some time to watch a movie or just relax or read a book or do whatever it is that you don't do for your day job.
I kind of had that experience last night because we got Kirby Star Allies in for to review later this week, and I was going to sit down and play it and record it, and I stopped myself and I said, you know what? I'm going to go downstairs, I'm going to play on my TV, and I'm just going to enjoy myself first, go back later this week, record some stuff, and then do the review. I want to get more into that mindset where I enjoy my game first before I use it for work. And I feel like that elevated my experience last night as I played the game for the first time. It was stress-free. I was playing the game for its intended purpose, to enjoy myself. In the future, it'll probably be easier for me to record games once I have a more elaborate setup for that, but as of right now, it was nicer for me to just play it on my own terms.
Yeah, and actually, I think Paul, do you have anything else that you'd like to say going back to Trigun?
No.
Okay, and I think that's a great segue. If Brandon, if you want to go ahead and talk about your experiences with Kirby Star Allies, because I know I'm still on the fence about that game. Kirby games aren't always up my alley, but I did play the demo and I was enjoying myself. So, what you got going on?
Well, so I'm in the middle of World 3 right now on Kirby Star Allies. The first world, as it turns out, if you remember during our discussion when I talked about the demo, I thought that the levels were fairly long. It turns out those levels were different pieces of different levels smushed together to make demo stages.
Right.
The levels themselves are actually much shorter. Not too short. They're actually, I'd say they're just right in terms of how long they are. Now, a criticism I've heard a lot about Kirby Star Allies is its difficulty, and I'm just going to come out and say it, that that's going to be a problem for pretty much the entire experience. It's not hard. I mean, I would say now in World 3, the game is actually starting to challenge me in certain regards. I've actually died once now. Albeit my death was because I jumped off of a cliff and accidentally hit the B button, so I just started inhaling as I fell to my death. But I'm finding myself getting out of stages with significantly less health than I would otherwise. I've had to save my allies on several occasions where they've died, and I've had to revive them. The level design in the first two worlds is kind of safe. Nothing too elaborate. What I am finding, though, is that in certain stages you'll find like a magic button, and if you press the magic button, you unlock an extra stage, like on the map somewhere. And then you get to play that. I found that the extra stages are really the stars of the show here. They're the most unique. They're by far the most difficult stages, and I generally seem to be having more fun on the extra stages than I do the main stages. The other cool thing about the extra stages is that they play retro music, like the exact arrangements from those games, as the background music to those stages. So that was cool for me. There's one from Superstar Saga, and I was like, oh, I know this song. So I was humming it along in its chiptune glory, and I was enjoying myself with that. World 3, so far, I think I would say I'm having the most fun in this world. Like I said, it's more challenging. It's as a world design, it's not like any world I've been to before in a Kirby game. It's very unique, and I think that's elevating my experience as well. I think I could summarize it thus far this way. If you liked Kirby Superstar, you'll like Kirby Star Allies, because this is a natural evolution of that game. This is not an evolution excuse me, this is not an evolution of Kirby 64. This is not an evolution of Kirby Triple Deluxe or Planet Robobot on the 3DS. This is a natural evolution of Kirby Superstar on the Super Nintendo. So if that's the kind of Kirby experience you like and that you crave, I'd probably recommend this game to you. And I've played a couple mini games. There are mini games in there, much like you'd find in Kirby Superstar, so I think they're really trying to evoke that experience. And I can see 2 modes on the screen so far that I don't yet have access to, that I imagine I'll unlock after I beat the game. So I look forward to seeing what that's all about. The game tells me I'm about 29% complete, and I'm in World 3, so not really sure how long the game is going to be thus far, but it sounds like it might be a relatively heftier experience, but that remains to be seen. But yes, I'm enjoying myself. And I've played everything up till now single player, so I have not even had a chance to play multiplayer yet. And that's my take on Star Allies for right now.
Okay. Actually, so one of the other games that I think this should inspire a good discussion, especially since you guys just recently got into it, Rocket League.
Yeah.
So I mean, you guys now let me be clear about this. You guys have both purchased this game on your Switch, yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I plan eventually to purchase this on my Switch now that you guys both have it, because I have a reason to. But previously, I only had it on my PC. And I've probably put about 30 hours into Rocket League. And something actually that I should say, it's Rocket League is objectively better with a controller than it is with a mouse and keyboard.
Oh, by far.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you guys feel about it so far?
Such a fun game. Like, it's so easy to get kind of sucked into it and just keep playing and having fun. Even if you're not good. Like, I'm getting to a point where I'm playing with people who are significantly better than me, and I'm still just enjoying just sucking it.
Right.
I have found much pleasure in just turning the chat off. More games need to have that as an option.
I didn't realize you could turn it off.
Yeah, I've had my
Game changer.
I've had my chat turned off probably since day one, actually. Rocket League's community isn't nearly as toxic as some other online gaming communities out there, but I like playing in a blind world. I like knowing that I'm playing with other players, but I don't care to know what they have to say. Like, if I'm not having a good match, I don't care. If I am having a good match, I don't need to gloat to the opponent.
Right.
So I'm just there to compete and have a good time, and it serves its purpose well. I've been a fan of Rocket League ever since I played it on Steam. And the Switch version is a great version. You're really not losing anything as far as this version goes. Yeah, actually,
that's another question is just in pure, like, graphical performance, frame rate, like, how does it hold up?
It is visually inferior, and you can tell from the very first moment you look at it. There seems to be some kind of resolution scaling going on. The quality of the shadows and textures aren't nearly as high as you'd find on PC. As far as performance is concerned, I'm pretty sure it plays at a lock 60, so that's the most important thing of the entire experience.
Right. I mean, I'm not a huge stickler for a lot of those things, like, maybe some PC players or other console players who have PS4s or something like that are. But it is nice to know that you're getting a solid experience regardless. Because I don't want to buy a game that's not fun to play just because it doesn't perform up to expectations.
For me, it's the kind of game I'm playing. Like, going back to Kirby plays at 30 FPS, and that was an issue for a lot of people. I don't care. I mean, it's a slow, casually paced platformer that doesn't demand too much from me. So I'm fine playing that game at 30 FPS. I wouldn't want to play Rocket League at 30 FPS because that requires a lot of precision control. So I'm very happy to report that Rocket League on Switch delivers that exact experience.
Right.
I would say that the only thing I'm losing out on, and it's not even a super big deal, is that you're playing the game without analog triggers, so you can't control the speed that you drive at.
Right, you kind of just have to toggle it just every once in a while.
You adapt, like,
Yeah.
I'm level 13, I think, and I've, for the most part, adapted quite well.
Okay. Well, cool. How much is that on the Switch?
$20.
Is that just $20? Okay. I'll probably pick that up in the near future. And
It's
then
been on sale, I think, on multiple occasions already on Switch for like
Okay,
$2 or $3
yeah,
off.
I'll definitely have to pick that up at some point because I need a reason to revisit Rocket League because I really do enjoy it. Because one of all the sports in the world, soccer is one of my favorite. Football, if you're not in the U.S. So just having that juxtaposition of playing soccer and then also driving around in these little cars, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, especially when you kind of get familiar with the controls and what you can do with the car. It's really satisfying to get a really solid goal in any given match.
You always feel cool because the things that you pull off just aren't possible in reality.
Yeah. On top of that, too, you also just have these really nice, robust customization features. You're always unlocking something you can add to your vehicle. Like right now, I have my favorite Rick and Morty character, Mr. Poopy Butthole, sitting on top of my car, and he's just blowing in the wind everywhere I go. I got tires from the Flash, and I got the Speed Force as my boost. And you just keep unlocking new things and changing toppers, changing antenna, changing colors, adding different stickers, decals, and
Switch comes
whatnot.
with a couple Nintendo exclusive costumes or cars as well. One for Mario, Luigi, and then another two for Samus. So there's a little added value there if you're a Nintendo fan.
Yeah.
I will say though, there's a boost stream that you get for Mario. That's the Starman. You just get stars that come out of your car. Whoever made the sound effect for that, it is one of the most awful sounds I've ever heard. I had to switch from it because I couldn't stand to listen to it anymore.
Oh no, that's no fun.
I hate when other people use it because of it.
Why is it such a bad sound? Why didn't they just use the Starman theme from Super Mario Brothers or something? It's bad.
Yeah.
Rocket League is a good game. You should play it.
I do not regret buying it a second time.
I don't either.
I absolutely do not regret it.
Well, I can't wait to buy it a second time as well and
We can't wait for
play
you to
with
get
you
it. We
guys.
can have League Night.
I have one more game for myself I'd like to talk about briefly.
Go for it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Didn't get to talk about it a lot last week because of time constraints, but I played my first session of Gloom Haven over the weekend last week. This is a really, really good game. Gloom Haven is a tabletop game, campaign-based, persistent, much in the way of D&D. So you grab a couple people together, you pick your characters, you build your characters, you name your party, and then you set off on your adventure. And we played our first scenario, and we barely survived. It was very close to the end before all of us were dead, and we made it through. Of our party of 4, only 2 of the 4 actually made it to the end and survived the scenario. But it's really cool. It's a card-based battle system. So every character has a deck, and you build your deck based on what level your character currently is. So there's a lot of cards in my deck that just have 1 or an X on it. And I can build a combination. My character can have a deck of 10 cards. So I can build a combination of 10 cards from those cards built in the deck, and I can kind of design my battle strategy around that. And every character has a different number of cards they can hold in their deck. Obviously, they have different abilities on their cards per class, and there's just a lot of variety to the gameplay here. The only thing that might be troublesome for your first couple sessions is you have to control the enemy AI as well as your own. And there's a list of kind of guidelines for how you control your enemy AI when you're playing the game, and you kind of have to get used to that. And it is also kind of unfortunate when you knowingly have to place an enemy in a position where it's going to kill you, but you have to because that's the rule of the game. I kind of wish there was some kind of automated way to do that, but even so, it's still a fun experience. There's a lot of build up, a lot of preparation. I think setting up the game can take anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. So if you're planning a session, have the game ready before your players get there. Or have your players help you put it together, because it takes a bit. Definitely look forward to playing more Gloom Haven. I got it for $100. Me and Devin split the cost in half, because the two of us are going to be in the party every week we play. And, you know, we played one scenario. It took us like 5 hours, and there's over 100 scenarios in the game. So we're going to get plenty of playtime out of this. So I highly recommend it if you like tabletop games. Just know it takes a ton of real estate, and you might have to build a 5x5 table, but you can find a really cool video of that on our YouTube channel.
Whoa!
So that's my 2 cents on Gloom Haven.
Yeah. Awesome. Paul, is there anything you would like to mention about some extra games that you played this week?
Well, just briefly, I'll run through what I played.
Okay.
All of it, I've been playing it already. I've talked about them at length, so I'm not going to dive too deep into them. But I hopped on Monster Hunter World for a little bit, trying to finish those limited bounties, and I got through the top 2 and forgot to go back and finish the 3rd one. So, oops. I finally beat Bayonetta 2. Wholly delightful.
I'm glad that you like those games, Paul.
Me too. I did that while you guys were playing Gloom Haven. I was over at the TV playing Bayonetta 2, and
yeah, like I forgot that you were staying like through that Monday, so I'd set up this Gloom Haven session, and I realized that you were still going to be there. So luckily, you had your Switch and you had Bayonetta 2 to finish, and I was kind of glancing over, watching you fight the final boss, and kind of trying to gauge your reaction as you were doing it.
I love how those games just like progressively get wilder and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
It definitely like by the end it feels like you're actually like the last fight was really substantial.
Yeah.
Not quite as much as the first one, but it was still like
it's substantial in a different way, I think.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for Bayonetta 3. I can't wait to get the first kind of glimpse at that game. And I'm happy to know that's coming to Switch.
That teaser just like it got me so hyped, and just seeing how like the scale of each game has gotten bigger up till now, I'm really excited to see where they go with it.
On a quick note for Bayonetta 3, I was kind of expecting Bayonetta to get a third design, like, you know, a third look. I thought that was just kind of be a theme. But it looks like it's mostly just based off of her look from the first game, which I also don't mind. So,
and then Jean will go back to having short hair again.
Short hair Bayonetta is definitely my favorite Bayonetta.
Yeah. In addition to those, I played some Golf Story and Splatoon 2. Also, both delightful games.
I put a little time into Golf Story this past week. I feel like I just need to dedicate some time and just finish the game.
It's not a long game. I think it's like a 10-hour total experience.
I need to step my game up.
It's nice to kind of take your time with it, though, being that it's such a short game.
Right.
Let's see. I don't think I've played anything else. Logan, you've been playing something you've been dying to talk about.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Dalton Chase Goodman in the chat. First time I've been able to catch the show. Excited to see it. Excited to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, boy.
Sorry, Logan, all you.
Bloodborne.
Okay, and I should also mention, before I start talking about this game, that my mother is in the chat.
Hi, Mama.
Saying, oh, heck with the games. Get out there and find yourself a good woman. Just like a mother. Thank you so much. Kisses, Mom. I love you. Ton.
Hi.
But my priorities are already set. And this week, my priorities are with this game right here.
Ooh.
Bloodborne has taken up a good chunk of my time in the past week. And for good reason. I don't think I've ever heard a bad thing about this game, and other than the fact that, it's too hard, which that's not exactly true. It's just really freaking hard. And I think I was ready for this kind of experience. It's taken me a while as a gamer, years honestly, to accept the idea that I am capable of playing a very difficult game. And this game has been kicking my ass. Okay, so actually, before we got on today, I was playing, and I finally got to like the second area. So you start out in a place like a city called Yharnam, and there's different segments of the city, different spawn points that you can go to. But I finally got out of Yharnam, and I entered the Forbidden Wood, right? And so all of a sudden, instead of just being like in this city and the aesthetic being pretty consistent across the city, it just has completely changed. All of a sudden, it's this really dark forest. There's these old, rundown wooden like huts everywhere, and some larger there's some larger buildings that you'll enter. But man, okay, I just want to talk about right now like the aesthetic and the setting in this game is phenomenal. So I remember when I first played it, I had not gotten out of Yharnam, and now that I have, the visual design is just beyond good. It's so one of the prettiest games I have ever played, to be honest. So there's just a lot to like about this game. I've come to realize that the combat feels like a dance. It flows really well, very much like Monster Hunter. There's timing for all these attacks, so you have to time the attacks correctly. There's a little bit of leeway in between, like, okay, here's my first attack with this button, then my second attack with this button. So there's a lot of depth once you get into it, and I love that about the combat. So whenever you're like, okay, I'm facing up against like this really hard enemy, and you just kind of read their tells correctly, and you know when to back off and when to go forward, and when you accomplish something, it's really, really, really gratifying. And that's something that would not be possible if this game was any easier than it was. You would not feel the same sort of satisfaction, at least I don't think I would, if the game was easy. And it's not, and it's beautiful, and you just gotta mess around with it. It's very Japanese, so there's not a lot of things that are explained to you. You just have to discover them for yourself, and I couldn't love it anymore at this point. So, but when I say it's hard, I have come across one of the next boss battles, and it's called the Shadow of Yharnam. And it's these 3 enemies that come at you. One is based, like, there's a lot of projectiles that they'll throw at you. One is very just based off of, okay, I'm going to come and slash you. And then there's one that's kind of a mid-range. And they're all attacking you simultaneously. So you constantly have to be moving around and trying to get in an attack or two, and transforming your weapon in between, like your single-handed weapon mode and your double-handed weapon mode, and just trying to manage all of this is just chaos. But when you can manage it correctly, you show some sort of competency, you start to progress within this battle. And there were times where I would almost taken out one of the guys, and that would have made the battle significantly easier. If you're able to take out one of the guys, and then you have to deal with 2, and then you can take out another and just deal with the last one. But I want to say that I probably tried to fight this boss 7 or 8 times this morning, and I have not been successful yet. I thought about calling in for some help, getting some co-op help, but this one I've really been kind of stubborn and trying to do it solo, because I'm like, I can do it. I've been making progress, and I'm reading their tells better, and my inputs are a lot more, I would say, correct, meaning being able to get some damage in there without taking damage myself. Ultimately, this game, you have to recognize that it takes some patience. It takes some patience to learn. It takes some patience when you're fighting things. You can't just go in willy-nilly into any sort of encounter, even if it's like a weaker guy that you can hit, you can kill in 2 hits. Like, there's still a chance that you could die. And it's disappointing, but then I keep getting back up and I keep going at it. And that's really what's important. It's that compelling. But yeah, there's so much going on right now in it, and I couldn't love it more. Every sort of milestone. So maybe you find another lamp that allows you to go back to the hunter's dream, or maybe you get around to the other side of a shortcut, and all of a sudden you don't have to go that one way anymore. You can go another way, and it gives you a lot more freedom to go in these areas, and it's really satisfying. It's every single milestone. There has been multiple times where I've been playing this game, and just every time I unlock a new shortcut or get to a new lamp, just visibly yelling out, "Yes! I've made it! I've done it!" And then you just I set it down, and I've only played an hour, but I just feel so good about myself. And I love when a game can give you that feeling, when you just feel very, very much accomplished. And minuscule accomplishments. You don't have to do a lot, but those things, getting to those things, it's difficult in and of itself, and it's really satisfying. So if you're willing to be patient, put in the time, willing to fail a lot, then I know this game, I think in a week, this game will have been out for 2 years already. Wow. So chances are, if you're interested in this game, you might have already heard about it. If you're interested in the Dark Souls games, because it's from the same developer as the Dark Souls games, you will probably enjoy this. You just have to get over the hump. I would argue that the hump might be one of the first bosses. If you can get past the first boss, it really opens up the game. And it really makes you feel accomplished, and you're like, okay, I think I'm prepared for the challenge ahead. So, can't recommend it enough.
And how many hours are you at right now?
I haven't checked as of late, but I'm probably, I want to say 12 to 15 hours already.
Okay, because I don't really have a gauge for how long these games are. Because you have like you said, you have to get over that hump, and then there's the rest of the game to follow. So it's a big time commitment. For those who don't have it, is it still the PSN game of the month? Is it still?
It is. March. It's currently.
Yeah. So if you don't have it, if you have PSN, just go download it. It's free.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think ultimately, and this is a game you don't have to dedicate a ton of time to. You can play okay, say you want to sit down for an hour and a half. You just have some time to spare. You can make some progress in an hour and a half. You can make some progress in half an hour if you're really familiar with how the game functions. But again, getting over that hump is going to be what's going to take the most time, I think. Mm-hmm. And then you can kind of just come back to it every once in a while. I found that it's a game that I can invest a few hours into at any given moment, or I can just hop in for half an hour and also just have a really good time and feel like I actually did something and moved somewhere.
It's nice to have games that reward you more through just the experience than through any kind of trophy or any in-game reward that you get. As we've mentioned before, that's why I love Monster Hunter so much, is just the initial experience of it is very rewarding. Just all the time I spent in Try when I finally figured out how to play, and that was rewarding enough. That was reason enough for me to keep playing, so I definitely relate to you in that regard. And I think other people would too, if they give it a chance. I'm definitely going to go back and try and get over that myself. I kind of put it down because I had lots of other games coming out that I wanted to play. This month alone, I want to say there's like 4 games that I planned on getting, and only one of them is out right now.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I actually just, if you guys have ever been on the website howlongtobeat.com,
Yeah.
kind of gives you an estimate of how long it might take to get through the game. It looks like the main story, if you're looking to get the main story, the average is about 35 hours.
Okay.
It says rushed, you can get it through in under 25, and if you're really relaxed, upwards of 50. But it doesn't seem like, it has a lot of content, but it's not, you're going to end up putting hundreds and hundreds of hours. I imagine if you wanted to, you probably could put that much time into it, but it looks like for a playthrough, that's 35 hours. That's pretty standard. That's not overblown. So if that's, for whatever reason, the reason you don't want to jump into it, again, if you can get into it, it's not going to take you forever to really get the experience that you're looking for.
So definitely check out Bloodborne if you have PSN, and if you don't, if you have a trial available, that's a good way to get it. I think that takes care of all the games, movies, and TV shows. So we have one anime that we should probably talk about.
Yep, let's do it.
Coming in at last place, I finally finished Fullmetal Alchemist last night, and I'm ready to talk about it. So, where do we begin?
Let's go. I got it. Favorite character, go.
Hohenheim.
And for you, Paul?
I don't have. I can't.
You can't.
I just can't.
Okay, name some favorite characters then. Why? Give us like 2 or 3 characters that really you connect with.
I absolutely adore. Well, Greed was phenomenal. I love Greed. Hohenheim was such a rich and fantastic character with such a great backstory and such a fabulous ending. I love the growth of Edward and Al.
Quite literally, the growth of Edward.
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like for him in particular, like his ending it took a lot from him specifically. Like he had to really grow, and that was the key to the whole story.
Michaela in the chat is saying Winry is her favorite character.
She's a good character. Personally, I'm with Brandon. I think we mentioned this chatting with each other last night. As Hohenheim is my favorite character. I thought he was definitely the character you saw the least at the very beginning. You were like, who is this guy? He's Ed and Al's father, but there seems to be more to him. I also was like, is he a baddie? Is he a good guy? But I think he was definitely one of the more complex characters.
He's just a giant question mark until like more than halfway through.
Yeah, his exposition rolled out much slower than some of these other characters. And I really enjoyed that because it was like, okay, here he is. He kind of exists. But then a little bit after a little bit, like you kind of got to know who he was. And I think that's one of the reasons I connected with him so well.
In the ending, he also had one of my favorite moments. It's when you realize that of all the thousands of souls inside of him, keeping him alive for an extended period of time, he knows every single one of them.
Yeah.
He valued all the lives that it took to prolong his own. And, it meant something to him. He carried that weight.
Right.
I really appreciate his character.
And I mean, if you're listening to this, major spoilers ahead. In that
end of it, so.
Yeah, at that final moment when he kind of finally felt at peace, and then you could see his body just kind of falling apart and his peaceful death. You don't get all that much, what's the word I'm looking for? Resolution with all the characters. Sometimes you still have questions about, what are they going to do with the rest of their lives? But then Hohenheim, you got from the beginning to end. Like, this is the person he was, how he started out. Here's his backstory, and we get to see like how he goes out. And I think that in of itself was like, it was just really satisfying, a really satisfying moment. Even though you're like, no.
There's only one
Like,
thing
he's
I would change
gone.
about it.
What's that?
I really wish Ed and Al had been there. That was the only dynamic that I wish we could have gotten a little bit more of.
I feel like his experience with Al is explored to an adequate degree. I was a little disappointed in just how little interaction you get between him and Edward. When they really meet back up towards that last act of the show, you're kind of left without any resolution between the characters until like the very last moments. And for me, that felt kind of awkward, and I understand, the relationship between them was supposed to be awkward in the first place. I just feel like that was handled kind of strangely. That's probably one of maybe two major criticisms I had. I would have liked to have understood that dynamic a little bit more, and I don't feel like we got enough of it.
I wanted them to find more peace. More particularly for Ed. I wanted him to kind of be at peace with his father.
Well,
and
I feel like
to a degree it was there, but not to the level I wanted it.
I think it was inferred in certain interactions. I remember there was that final moment, and I think it was in like the second to last episode, where Hohenheim was like, hey, if we're gonna get Al's body back, you can use me. Like, I'm ready to die. I'm ready to be gone. And Ed kind of wasn't. He's like, no. This is something that I did, and this is something that I'm going to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he gave up something so key to what this whole show was about, and that's alchemy. He gave up his ability to perform alchemy.
As a whole. How you have to actually face what you've done wrong, and you have to give up that desire.
Right. So I thought that was cool, and so at least in that moment, I think it inferred that like Ed wasn't so angry with his father anymore. And he was like, no, I'm not going to take your life. Because, I still want you around to a degree.
That's kind of where my criticism kind of lied, because I feel like I never got to that point with Ed before he made his decision in that situation. You have Hohenheim explain his story to Ed and the rest of the crew that he was hanging out with at the time around that campfire, and you never really got a sense for how Ed felt about that. And then we get to this point where he tells Hohenheim that he's not going to sacrifice his life to bring Al's body back, and that he was going to do it his own way because it was his fault. I feel like I'm missing a little bit of the in-between there that would have led to Ed's feelings in that regard.
Right.
Not so much that I think it was bad, because I loved it actually. I just kind of wanted a little bit that got us from point A to point B.
I felt like that interaction was less about their relationship and more about Ed's resolve to make up for his sins. It wasn't. I don't know.
I do believe there was some I do agree with Logan, though. I think there was some implied relationship with him and Hohenheim when the two of them cry for one another, because I don't think Ed would have teared up for any other reason than thinking about sacrificing his father's life for something like that.
Yeah. Just to comment, Dalton is saying that Mustang was his favorite character. So Mustang was a fantastic character.
One of my favorites too.
I did not see that little bit of him going blind. That hurt so much because
but it was so cool.
Yeah, but like he didn't do anything wrong, and he was the one that had to suffer for it.
Right. It was kind of just taken from. But I also thought it was something that it changed him for the better, I would argue. Like, at a certain point, he realized that, like he didn't need his sight to do what he needed to do.
He was blinded to his ambitions.
Right. And you could tell that he struggled throughout the series with his like anger and all that. And it seemed like by the end of it, he was very like, oh, okay, I'm much more at peace with myself. I've seen what I've done wrong. And now I can begin to make things right.
Yeah.
And that's obviously pretty clear that his priorities had straightened out and that he had gotten his priorities. Like, he was not valuing himself as much as he was the people around him.
There was also kind of a throwback to Fuhrer Bradley with the whole eye thing, because, you know, Fuhrer Bradley has an eye patch with one of his eyes covered, and then you get to this point where we're going to see Mustang become Fuhrer in the future, and he loses both of his eyes, which he does then get back shortly afterwards, but even then I think that was kind of a cool correlation. And his master, who ends up becoming Fuhrer before him, also wears glasses, so there's an eyesight theme going on there.
Yeah, and I actually, at that moment, they're like, hey, we think we have this, like, Philosopher's Stone. It's just something that's left over. We're not going to make some new ones, but we might as well use it while we have it, and we think we can get you your sight back. And he was like, before that happens, these things needs to happen. You know, before I benefit from this, we need to see how other people can benefit from that. And so it kind of set up like this assurance that the country was in good hands and that things were really, really brightening up, that you had this person who was going to be taking power, who was selfless and was going to be a servant leader, which is something that's very desirable.
This is definitely like a theme throughout the ending, with pretty much every character's final resolution is, you know, you have Ed and Izumi, who both have to accept and live with the fact that they're the reasons that everything's taken place, and now they're going to use those powers that they have to reverse that and, you know, make up for the things that they did. Ed with his entirety of alchemy, and you see that with General Mustang, or Colonel Mustang, and his eyesight, you know, because he's got these ambitions, and those ambitions kind of clouded his judgment. So now his eyesight's gone, and now they're going to use that Philosopher's Stone to, which was made from all the lives lost in the past, to kind of restore the lives and the situations these people are in going forward. There was the same thing happens with Hohenheim. You know, his all these things that happen to these people. He becomes a Philosopher's Stone. He ends up using those abilities to kind of rectify that. And then you have Havoc, who loses his legs. And, you know, after he had lost his legs, he was like really bitter and angry that he was in this situation. You know, he couldn't be in the army anymore. But then he finds a new way to contribute by being an arms dealer and supplying the army with all of their weapons. And then after he accepted that, a way for his legs to come back to him surfaces. So I love that theme, just like across all of the character arcs.
Guys, I miss Hughes.
Maze Hughes.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny because, you know, I think I've talked about something akin to what you were just saying about some of these characters, Brandon, in previous podcasts. And I think that's one of the reasons I liked this show a lot, is it was a lot of the times it was about characters accepting the limitations that they had and finding ways, logical and possible ways to overcome those limitations. Realizing what their priorities were and what they were willing to give up to make their lives and other people's lives better.
The law of equivalent exchange.
Right. So, you know, obviously, if you lose your legs, well, you can't walk. Well, find something else to do that you can do.
Yeah, arms.
And excel at that, right? So, I mean, in the same way, I'll just bring this up quickly. Like, we all have things that we're not good at, or things that we can't do, or can't eat, or can't see, that other people can, and we need to be okay with not being able to do those things, and finding ways that we can improve ourselves in other ways. And man, FMA really kind of put that front and center. And teamwork is key, and we couldn't have done this alone. And that's one of the reasons why I think this show is so special, and why it's endured so many years, and why so many people hold it to such a high degree.
Well, the nice thing about this show is that every action really truly has a consequence. It's unlike a lot of other shows in that. On top of that, you get to the end and it's not just a one-on-one match, between Ed and the bad guy. It's everybody. It's everybody coming together to live, kind of combining strength, and I really, really love that. And without, sorry, go ahead.
And that kind of plays into that theme of Ed and Al trying to come up with a new philosophy, not so much giving up one thing for another, but putting a lot of things together to make something new happen. And that directly plays into that theme of the final battle, where nothing really was given up except for a few lives, in the cases of Greed, and almost in the case of Al. But everybody came together to take out a common enemy, and they ended up on top without losing much in return.
They changed so many hearts along the way. It's so endearing. I love it. On a quick side note, there's been one thing that I've been waiting so patiently for you to finish so I can talk to someone about this. Brandon, did it remind you at all of Naruto? That
the entirety of the final act reminded me of Naruto. I knew the exact moment when you, when that kind of came into play. I was like, oh, this is partly what he means. And then going forward, it just kept the relationship.
It was screaming at me.
Yeah,
the whole time I was going through it.
I was like, this might be Naruto. Yeah,
I want to find out which came first, the chicken or the egg. In this case,
regardless, they both handle them pretty well. Though I'd argue that in its final act, Fullmetal Alchemist may have handled it quite a bit better.
I think it might have also done it first, so...
Yeah. One other criticism... I had two major criticisms. One was the relationship between Ed and Hohenheim, and then this one, kind of like when you get to Briggs, and, you start doing that story, and Ed and Al at the base there, the pacing gets super weird for, 10 episodes, and I just didn't know what was going on for a while. Ed and Al are separated for a long time. Just kind of when Greed joins the team, I was kind of confused. I didn't really see the basis for that so much right away. And then just an inexplicable amount of time passes between one episode to the next, and I'm just left not quite understanding where we were at. Because, at one point, Al is just kind of kidnapped by Pride. And at first, I was like, was this a dream? I don't even really know if that just happened. So, the pacing in that kind of 10-ish episodes was super weird for me. I don't know if anyone else felt that.
I don't remember it feeling that weird.
For me.
Yeah, it might have slumped in the middle in terms of pacing. You might be right, and I might even agree with that criticism. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it didn't really make that much of a difference to me. But man, that last part of the show, the last 12 episodes or something like that, that all took place in a very, very short time span.
2 days, I think, total.
Yeah. Whereas obviously a lot of time passed between, the rest of the series. I
think it was just the contrast in that segment where time suddenly was passing very quickly that was jarring to me.
Yeah.
And
I like that little time skip they did.
I didn't feel like it was necessary, though. I didn't really understand why it was there in the first place, but
I mean, if you think about their world and like how they communicate and how far they had to stretch just to organize everything, it makes sense. You know, it was a very large joint effort. A lot of planning went into it.
Yeah.
It took a lot of coordination. So it took time. I'm glad we didn't have to sit there and like they didn't stretch out that for another 10 episodes where they're just getting everybody into place, and you kind of go, it allows you to go into that last segment kind of not knowing what's about to happen.
I think I agree with that. I just think maybe the lead up to that could have been a bit clearer, maybe.
Yeah, that if I have any complaints, it would be that little segment at Briggs, and because that felt a little wonky for a while, but I think it did a lot to set up. Like that's the amazing thing about the series from episode 1 on. Like it's really building to this really great ending.
Yeah,
everything just keeps building and building.
And one thing I remember before I'd finished the show, I had mentioned that the whole series kind of comes back to this thing that happens like at the very beginning with Mina and the dog, and that ends up getting mentioned again at the end of the series, and ends up being like the catalyst for Ed and Al's journey beyond the ending of the anime.
Right.
At that point, I'd kind of forgotten about that experience, but I like how that experience was still driving them forward even beyond the defeat of the homunculus.
Yeah. I think, obviously this show does a lot of things right, but one thing that stuck out to me was the fact that it ended so well.
It was, you could have put a ribbon on that.
Yeah, like most of the characters who you wanted some sort of resolution out of, you got, and some of them were really good. Like obviously the core one was getting Al's body back, and eventually they did that. It was like, okay,
I kind of appreciate how much of a moot point him getting his body back was kind of at the ending there, because it wasn't as important as the thing they had accomplished as a collective.
Yeah. And I guess they even realized that wasn't the most important thing that they needed to do near the end of the series. It's like, yes, that's something that we set out to do, but then we realized there is much larger piece of the puzzle that's going to have a much larger consequence than just getting his body back.
Oh,
and so it was kind of, it felt like the cherry on top almost. Like we got his body back, but heck, we also saved the entire country.
Dalton in the chat is reminding people that Brotherhood is a retelling of the manga versus the original anime, which deviates pretty early on in the series. So if you're watching this and you haven't watched Fullmetal Alchemist or Brotherhood, and if you haven't, I don't know why you're here right now.
Don't watch the original.
Just watch Brotherhood. If you're looking for the actual plot, watch Brotherhood. Though I do hear that some people do have an appreciation for the original anime, despite its deviation. I've seen the ending of the original, and I think it pales in comparison to what we got. But that's just my personal take. You can like what you like. We don't discriminate in that regard.
Yeah. And so I would like to continue on just mentioning one of my favorite points of resolution in the very final episode was with the character of Ed, in the sense that, at one point they realized one of the reasons he was so short is because he was connected to Al through the portal, and he was essentially providing him with nutrients so that his body could be sustained. And so, but him being short also kind of came into his personality. Is he's still a child. He's still very much childish, and he's hot-headed and all of these things. And that all kind of gets resolved at the end, especially in the sense of they don't explicitly state that he got taller, but I was anticipating that he would. And then finally there was that one shot of him and Winry embracing each other, and then you realize he's taller than Winry. And then that's kind of when it hit. It's like, oh, dude, this kid's grown up so much.
And it was only a 2-year time skip between those two. The last time we'd seen him, so yeah, he had grown a lot since his final experience against the homunculus.
I love that because you see that like roll out in a lot of different series where it becomes a thing. Where the main character, you can tell he grows because he's now taller than his love interest, and they always make a point to say it. And this is one of the few cases where until you actually mentioned it to me, I hadn't even noticed.
Naruto.
Yeah. But I think it helps that it's an ongoing joke throughout the entire series that he's a freaking runt.
It really helps drive that home at the end. So
right, the contrast is pretty stark between that, and so yeah, this series does a lot of things right, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And I'm glad I finally got the chance to watch through it.
Me too.
I really don't know why it waited so long. It wasn't until Paul said that he had started watching it that it kind of hit me. I was like, I haven't watched this yet, and I know I'm going to like it.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the idea that you're just more motivated to do things when you have people to do it with. When you have somebody to discuss it with, because I wasn't just watching the show because I wanted to watch it. It's like, but I knew that afterwards I would get to have a discussion about it, and that's really going to augment the experience pretty greatly. Yeah, generally in a positive direction, because even after just talking about the show for a little bit, like I feel like it's just gonna sit within me a little more than it would have if I had just watched it on my own.
I feel like the ending is pretty interesting because, we end our journey with the beginning of another one. We see a lot of shows and a lot of media end that way. And sometimes they come back to it in 10, 15 years and we see what happens next. I don't expect that to happen in this case, but we're seeing that happen more often with things like with Dragon Ball. We saw it happen with Naruto with a very short break in between the two. And soon we're having it happen with Code Geass, which, Logan, I please implore that you watch that. Because that show ended like almost 10 years ago now, and now it's coming back. So,
oh, man.
Right.
I kind of love seeing that because, as much as it's just playing to nostalgia, you attach to these characters and there's some kind of emotional response that you get out of seeing them and seeing them interact and live out their lives. So getting to rejoin these characters in the future, I'm not necessarily opposed to, depending on where they would take the story. I'd like to see how Ed and Al kind of make their philosophy come true. That'd be cool.
Right.
I'm honestly like... There's a lot of series where I want to see that because I feel like, where they ended it wasn't as satisfying. This was such a satisfying ending for me.
They tie everything up.
If I don't get any more.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just not in the position where I'd be against it continuing in the future. Which I'm sure a lot of people probably are and are stabbing me in the heart right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think... I'm pretty indifferent towards it because I think it just ended so well that I don't feel like it's something that needs to be revisited, but I'm not sure I would mind if they did. But it also just depends on what they would do with it.
You have to be careful because there is a movie, The Sacred Star of Milos is a movie that takes place in the Brotherhood timeline. That movie was announced after Brotherhood ended. And it takes place about halfway through the anime. It doesn't take place after the ending because they didn't want to touch that. They're going to let the ending stand on its own and just provide a side story. That's cool. We could do that a couple times maybe. They're doing that with Dragon Ball Super, where Super doesn't, extend beyond the ending of Z, but just serves as another tale that maybe we haven't heard before.
Right.
But man... I don't think it would be right for us to conclude talking about Fullmetal Alchemist without mentioning the voice acting. Oh, look, Dalton just mentioned the voice acting. He says that he's asking if any of us have dived into Black Clover. Main character is voiced by Vic Mignogna, and it's a similar overcome your odds shonen story, but it's set in magic instead of alchemy. I believe that show is being animated by Studio Pierrot, who did Naruto, but I could be wrong.
I hadn't heard about it, but I'm interested, so I'll probably throw that on my list somewhere.
All I've heard about it so far is that the main character yells a lot, but so did Ed. So,
Yeah. Right.
Big Daddy Vic. Oh, I love that, man.
Did you mean his dubbed voice is the same actor or his Japanese one? Because we should preface, we watched this dubbed.
It was a good dub.
Yeah, that's probably one of the strongest dubs I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Big Daddy Vic
did a great job. I'm not necessarily familiar with all of the voice actors, and I can't.
Most of them just come from Dragon Ball Z, actually.
Right.
If it was there, that's all that matters.
Yeah, there wasn't anybody that stood out to me as like particularly awful. They were all at the very least like on par with what you'd expect.
They also had the advantage of having done the series once before.
Right.
I mean, I think most of the actors come back except for Alphonse, because in the original anime, Alphonse was I'm pretty sure was actually voiced by a young boy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And obviously could not return to fulfill that role a second time.
You can go back through puberty.
More anime should try that, I think, because it definitely stands out when you watch the original series. You can tell right away that an actual young man is voicing the character, and I think it serves it really well, because you hear just this very, hesitant young voice coming out of this giant metal suit of armor, and the contrast is very strong. Very good.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything else to talk about?
I think I'm all talked out. I think, yeah, I imagine that we'll have discussions in the future about it, but as it stands now, like, I'm just very satisfied.
Oh, Dalton confirms he was referring to Vic.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, Big Daddy Vic.
Vic is also the voice of Dark Mousy and Dean Angel.
We love Dean Angel.
The manga probably a little bit more than the anime.
Oh, definitely, bud.
Another one of those situations where the anime came out before the manga was done, so they invented their own ending.
In this case, it's a good thing that it happened, because we'll never actually get an ending to the manga.
Yeah, because it's been on hiatus forever.
I don't think it'll ever.
That happens too often.
Dalton says Black Clover is a simulcast on Hulu. About 3/4 of it is English dubbed. Michaela says Kingdom Hearts stinks right now. That's a topic for another time. I want to thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Breakdown Podcast. We'll be back once again next week to bring you the anime, movies, games, and TV shows that we've been consuming over the course of the week. I'll probably have a little bit more to say about Kirby Star Allies. You can look out for a review of that coming shortly. We have a couple more videos on the docket that'll be on the YouTube channel coming soon. Hope you guys look forward to that. Anything you gentlemen want to say before we close?
Keep it real. Play some games. Play Bloodborne. Watch Call Me By Your Name. Read a book.
Well, in a second, Brandon, you're going to tell them where all they can find us. Just as a little bit of encouragement to go there. You can see the aftermath of my accident. I'm going to post the pictures of my car after I hit that guardrail on the Discord server and then on Twitter. So go to where Brandon will tell you to go, and that way to check that out.
If you want to keep up with us and everything we do, you can follow me at Babababs on Twitter. You can follow Logan at LoggyDoves on Twitter. You can follow Paul at Gunnysaurus on Twitter. You can follow us as a collective at Breakroom Arcade on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and probably more places that I'm forgetting. You can go to our website,
Discord.
www.breakroomarcade.com. If you scroll down to the bottom of our webpage, you'll find a link to our Discord server where you can jump into the Discord server with us, chat with us about what you've been up to, and maybe we'll even mention it on the show. So definitely do that. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you're watching on Twitch, please leave us a follow. And if you're not watching us on YouTube or Twitch, do the reverse, please. We need as much help as we can possibly get. If you want to listen to us in audio form, you can find that on iTunes, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. Those are always available the Monday after the show airs. So Usually. So I want to thank you all for watching. Don't break your backs, breaking the games. But for now, break time is over.